All right, everyone. Of course, the big news of the day is that Amy Coney Barrett is officially now the one that Trump wants to replace Ginsburg on SCOTUS, filling that vacancy. Watching the left lose its collective fucking marbles over this is really funny, and this would be what I would class as like a B-minus choice. It's tolerable, it's reasonably good, it's acceptable. It's not great, but the thing is that there was no great replacement for Ginsburg. Anything, though, at least as far as gun rights go, tax law elements and stuff, insofar as that goes, anything's better than Ginsburg, because Ginsburg was the most liberal of the justices, or at least one of the two. I suppose you could make a case for Sotomayor. Any justice that you could replace her with would have to be further to the right on these issues. It would be impossible to be more anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment than Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That being said, the main line of attack that you're seeing emerge right now, you can tell that it's a weak attack, because by and large, they're not focusing on the fact that she belongs to a relatively religious organization. I can't remember what it's called, and they're harping about that from the far left, but you're not seeing it on CNN much. In fact, the USA Today had an article warning them not to attack her particular Christian beliefs, because that would be perceived of as hypocritical bigotry and would actually harm the Democrats down ballot. I happen to agree with that. There'll be a little bit of murmuring about religiosity. But they're not focusing predominantly on ideology or even on her religious status. They're focusing on decorum. They're focusing on the weakest possible angle of attack that they could with Amy Coney Barrett. That shows me that the Democrats are uncomfortable with the idea, I think, of attacking a female SCOTUS replacement, specifically because they don't want to open the can of worms of sexism from further elements of the left that'll say, well, at least she's, not a male. I think that they're worried about that. I think that they're worried to the point where they don't really have anything to complain about. Much like with Kavanaugh, they swore up and down the first thing Kavanaugh would do is unilaterally destroy Roe v. Wade. You see Warren raising that specter. You see Harris and Biden in a roundabout way mentioning it. Primarily the only platform thing that I'm seeing from neoliberal Democrat Party Twitter, which is their echo chamber, the only thing I'm seeing is pre-existing conditions, really. And the occasional conspiracy theory that Trump will lose the election, but SCOTUS will magically give it to him anyway, which is a pile of steaming horse shit. It's basically just fodder for the Democratic partisans. Amy Coney Barrett, at the end of the day, because of her particular beliefs, is not going to significantly increase the left's enthusiasm, especially if she is put in that position and confirmed before the election happens. And I would tell Mitch McConnell, if I were advising him, you should take the issue up immediately. You should hold hearings as quickly as possible. You should limit the time of each senator during those hearings as much as possible. And you should get it done within a few weeks, long before the election actually happens. There needs to be at least, I'd say, a week or two gap, a cool-down period afterwards so that it falls out of the news cycle. Otherwise, you risk having a little bit higher turnout among the left. One of the greatest advantages for Republicans in this election is that they're fired up. Not just for Trump. When you have a candidate firing things up, it trickles down the ballot. We saw this certainly in 2016. Trump has a huge enthusiasm gap against Biden. And if you can swing 2.2 in the aggregate in the final results versus the final polling in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, who at the end of the day was a reasonably good debater, and while a mediocre candidate had some enthusiasm behind her, imagine what Trump can do against Biden when his in-party enthusiasm is higher than it was in 2016. Biden's got a 6-point greater gap. You can end up, though, pissing part of that away if Amy Coney Barrett's potential appointment is on the table because you stupidly wait until after the election. If it remains an election issue, it can only benefit the left. It would be an example of the Republicans trying to walk that fine line, take the middle ground. We'll do it after the election, but before Inauguration Day. So she'll get confirmed, but we're not going to vote against it till after, for decorum reasons. Don't take the bait. Go whole hog for once. Tell the Democrats, look, the people, it's like one of the lines, I think it was a Klobuchar saying this, I think early this morning, or one of these people. They all sort of run together because they all take the same talking points from the same pool of staff. Was saying, the Senate shouldn't vote until the people get a vote. The people did vote in 2016. They elected Trump, a Republican president, and they gave the Republicans a 53-seat advantage in the Senate. They already voted. The election hasn't been held yet. Typically, if it's in party, that is, the president's party controls the Senate, you vote on it during an election year. The only holding out is when the parties are not of the same alignment. Of course, why would the Senate vote to confirm a nominee from someone that they don't support for partisan reasons? That wouldn't make any sense. That would be literally, you're asking the Senate to allow a defeat when it already has a victory. The Republicans have the votes already to confirm. And of course, I don't think Barrett, at the end of the day, is going to be a hard right like a Scalia-style judge. And Ramsey mentioned this the other day. Her mentor was Scalia. That doesn't mean she has the same views. On guns, she is consistently pro-gun. That's one great thing about her. On issues like taxation and so forth, pro-business, that can run into corporatism, which I'm not happy with. But, you know, as far as being pro-business in the more general sense, that's good. I would have maybe problems with her on pro-choice versus pro-life, because of my own personal stance, but because of the composition of the court, because Roberts and Kavanaugh sided with the liberals anyway, and there's still 3 liberals on the court, Roe v. Wade is not magically going to get destroyed because another person who happens to be religious is on the court. It's just not going to happen. The idea that because she has Catholic beliefs or happens personally to disagree with abortion and has a shit ton of kids, including 2 adoptees from Haiti, that she's magically going to be whole hog gunning for Roe v. Wade, that's just not the case. And keep in mind the composition of the court. If Trump were to get a 4th SCOTUS appointee, it would be replacing one of the 2 staunchest conservatives anyway. Thomas and what's his name there wouldn't be replaced. Sotomayor, I think, is still in her 50s. The liberal justices are younger. With respect to everything other than Kavanaugh is youngish because he's been appointed more recently, and then Roberts, he's middling. And then Amy Coney Barrett, of course, would be young as well. Any further replacements are almost certainly going to be replacing one of the aging conservative justices, so it wouldn't change the balance of the court if Trump gets a 4th or even a 5th SCOTUS justice. It'd be the Trump court for the next generation, which I find hysterical. Now, it's funny because even CNN, it was so great. Like this morning, one of their main page A stories on there. If you go to CNN right now, you probably see it. Make sure to archive it if you share it out anyway. If you go there, one of the stories, there's like, well, Trump has become a very consequential president. Yes, of course. In a single term, he's managed to accomplish more than most presidents do in 2. It's just that there's such a divisive political climate right now that half the population thinks that what he's accomplished is terrible and regressive and is turning us into the Third Reich or something. But he's definitely consequential. A third of the Supreme Court is going to be Trump. It's been a while since a president had that advantage. And I think it's a good thing. Kavanaugh was a good choice. Gorsuch as a replacement for Scalia made sense. Amy Coney Barrett, while I happen not to agree with everything that she stands for, ultimately at the end of the day is a tolerable choice and was a safe choice. They can't call her a sexist because she's female. They can't have any rape accuser climb out of the woodwork to say that she finger banged him at a party 25 years ago because, you know, Me Too doesn't work for people without a Y chromosome. So really, the only thing they're going to be able to do is say, well, she adopted the Haitian kids as handbag adoptees, so she's racist. They'll probably try that. And then they'll focus on, well, now is just not the time to nominate her. But you can tell that they're afraid. Because they're going down that cautious route, just saying, no, it's abnormal. We should follow decorum. We should be very solemn. And we must not nominate, we must not vote on this person until after the election at least. It's like they're trying to find middle ground to wait until after the election but before Inauguration Day. What's the fucking point? You're going to end up putting her in there anyway. In the lame duck session, the Republicans would still be in control regardless of the election results. What's the point? There is none. And of course, with the election being a situation where you could be 2-3 weeks later till they officially decide the results, the Republicans aren't going to wait. They're going to put her on SCOTUS so they don't have to worry about the very real possibility of a 4-4 decision and a locking down of the executive branch of our government with no clear victor and no clear path forward through the process of decorum. If you have a 4-4 Supreme Court split on who won based on the fact that nobody can count the fucking ballots properly, which is the whole goal in some of these states, so that you don't know who the president is on January 20th, it's a constitutional crisis. I'm pretty sure it also breaches the duties of the legislature and of the rest of the government. What are you supposed to do? You can run into these snafus when you have a legalistic civic society, when everything has to be like very by the book, very solemn, a lot of decorum and stuff. You can have a problem where there is no actual maneuverability where you can solve a problem and then you automatically create a new legal precedent in whatever you do. I would be uncomfortable with that. I think that the amount of social stress that would cause, especially during a recession with a pandemic looming over us, we've already got riots and shit, I think things could explode. It's the Republicans' duty, therefore, to put her forward as quickly as possible, have a straight up or down vote, which will end up being partisan. It'll be a 51 in favor decision. Collins, at the end of the day, might do, I think it was Collins or was it Murkowski, one of the two, at the 11th hour decided to vote for Kavanaugh, and they got joined by Joe Manchin. It'd be funny if they paid Joe Manchin to vote for it, too. So they have one Democrat aboard, and they can say it's bipartisan. Really, though, it's going to be a partisan decision. Poor Roberts, he's no longer going to be the focal point of the court, even though he's Chief Justice. Kavanaugh will be. I think that that's a better court, by the way, overall on some issues. That's about all. Peace out.